Worked, that's all we did. Worked, that's all we did, the same thing.
Typical life was this every day of the week. Sunday we had off. You get up in the morning at 5 o'clock. You'd go up the farm, whether it was picking, tying up tomatoes, chipping the grass, whatever that was to do. And there was not much water those days around, so the water pressure was very, very low. So then at 9 o'clock at night, my sister and I will go up there every second night and water tomatoes till 2 o'clock in the morning.
Well, we grew tomatoes in Canley Vale, then in Green Valley, then in Preston's. When we first started growing tomatoes, it was the old red China tomatoes. A crinkly one, a soft tomato, but a beautiful eating tomato. Then came the Rouge de Marmande, which was a harder tomato, but an early cropper, smoother skin. The tomatoes wanted plenty of water, but good drainage.
Originally we had to get the bags and sew them together, and then when they were ready, we would put them down, and we'd put them, before we put the plants in, we'd have the wires put in, and the stakes here, we have them there, and then they would be ready for the tomatoes to be planted in. And while they were growing, we had to open the bags in the morning and close the bags at night so the cold wouldn't chill them overnight. And that would go on until they grew to a certain point where the bags would touch tomatoes, and then it would have been about October. About mid-October, we would take the bags off, make the big holes in the centre, and then we would put the tomato stakes in and tie them, and had the usual thing, tying them and pruning them, and they would be ready, the fruit would be ready by Christmas.
We had 55 acres between us at Preston's. So we grew crops of tomatoes of anything up to 25,000 plants.
Then when the crop was put in, we put about 7,000 or 8,000 plants in. That was 1938. And then we did the beds, me and my mum, and planted tomatoes. They were wonderful. Whoever came, they couldn't believe it, but it had a lot to do with the new soil, you know. This doctor asked my brother, who were the two women that put the first crop of tomatoes in Liverpool. And he said the younger woman used to wheel the wheelbarrow up the hill and all that. And Steve said, gee, he said, that was my mother and my sister.
We used to have crops at different stages, no more than 4,000 in one, and then a few months later you plant another 4,000, and it goes on and on till winter. When winter come on, we have nothing in the winter because of the frosts. Only we used to have cabbages and peas, that's right, in the winter, but mainly tomatoes in the summer.
That's how they used to sell the tomatoes at the markets, in boxes. And when you pack them, you put your lids on them with your stamp on it, and they don't go off to market.
There were some bumper crops, but boy, we flooded the city markets. Agents used to come in from Melbourne, buy up cheap, go down and sell dear. So the growers thought, well, there's an opening for us down there if only we could get the tomatoes in an orderly fashion to the Melbourne markets. And of course, the growers got together, and Leppington Co-op was formed.
And the first box of tomatoes that Dad would make at Leppington, he would send them up to Coolah. He'd send two boxes, one to the Smiths and one to the Robertsons. And they'd pick them dead green, but by the time they arrived there in those days with the train, they'd be almost ripe. And they really enjoyed it and appreciated it.
Because I don't like the tomatoes. I don't like tomatoes. And I say to my husband, I not do it anymore. Because that hard, black in the sun, That's very, very hard for me.